we are also live streaming this on Facebook. So we hope you will enjoy this conversation. Oh, let me take my, hold on, there we go. Hi, everyone. So it's great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have an enlightening, engaging conversation. And so let me just go ahead and introduce myself. I am Candy Lewis, and I am the Executive Director of Positive Results Center. We are formerly known as Positive Results Corporation. I have my assistant, Jennifer, joining us, who will be putting everyone on mute. And so if you do have your phone and it is live, I'm muting you, Jennifer is muting you, we're gonna keep you muted. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, we're asking you to put them in the chat box, and Jennifer will be monitoring that chat box for us. But also there will be times when we will open the conversation up where we do wanna hear your voices. And so let me just go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen so that we can start this presentation. Okay, so as you know, you've joined us for Are You Safer at Home? Men as Allies, Preventing Intimate Partner Violence. And I'm going to start off with the disclaimers. There are going to be triggers. We are going to use some language that some of you may deem as disrespectful, rude, discriminating, violent, hateful, or any other number of things. But we want you to know that this discussion is about violence and abusive relationships. We do not mean to be offensive. We are not trying to trigger or hurt or harm anyone, but we're going to give it to you real, the way we hear it, the way we see it, the way we experience it, for those not only of us who may have experienced it, but also for those of us who work in this work every single day. And in order for us to really bring some real change about this conversation and preventing violence and abuse, we gotta be real. So now if you're looking for the sugar-coated, let's make it pretty, you better leave now, because that's not what's gonna happen today. We're gonna get real. So again, I am Candy Lewis, and I'm the Executive Director of Positive Results Corporation. And we are going to be creating awareness about preventing violence. And in this trauma and awareness series, we're going to explore relationships through the historical lens and the violence and abuse of the young boys and men. Our goal is to create awareness of the triggers and the violence that ensues, to create strategies to help young men and their families make positive decisions about their current lives and future directions. And I'm really excited that we are bringing this conversation of men in the room. If anyone who has ever been in any of our workshops or trainings, you know that we always say, and I especially always say, that violence and abuse begins in the womb. And until we bring the boys and the men into the conversation, we are not going to prevent it. I'm also going to say this right here and right now. This conversation, again, is not meant to hurt anyone. It is not meant to offend anyone. I am not taking one side over the other. I'm not placing women against men, but we are bringing men into the conversation because we know that historically, men have been the abusers. But we know now that men are abusers, women are abusers. We know that boys and girls are abusers, but we also know that women and men and boys and girls get abused. And so if we don't bring this whole conversation full circle, we're going to continue to deal with this stupid mess for not only all my life, all your life, your children's life, and until this world ceases to end. So I believe that we may not ever be able to prevent and end violence totally, but we could definitely make a change. And on that note, I want to introduce you to our experts. Now, before I bring them on, let me tell you something. If y'all are not ready, you better get ready. We have put together a dynamic group of men. These are men who have been doing work in the community, men who are serious about creating awareness about violence and abuse and ending violence and abuse and creating awareness about trauma. And so as I introduce each one of the gentlemen, I would like you all to just come on for a second and tell us a little bit about who you are. I sometimes introduce people, but I really love to hear what you have to say about yourself. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Barry Accius, Mr. Barry Accius, to please join us and just tell us a little bit of who you are. And while he joins us, as you can see, he is the co-founder and CEO of Voice of the Youth of Sacramento. So Barry, are you with us? All right, let me unmute you, Barry. Hold on. Okay, wait. Barry, unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm free. The shackles are off. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Barry Accius here in Sacramento. Hopefully everyone is quarantining correctly and properly and is safe. Just a little bit about me, just a community activist. 2008, I started the Voice of the Youth. That actually aligned me up to do a lot of the work. A lot of the police brutality work in Sacramento was, pushed by folks like myself on the community, on the ground. Cooking programs have been pushed by me and other individuals in the community on the ground. The community violence that we've dealt with at a high level here in Sacramento. Some of the new initiatives and things that have been pushed in legislation has been pushed by folks like myself who have led into that work. And I'm just an overall dude that's about Black businesses, Black youth, and the empowerment of our people. So I also am an entrepreneur. I have a Black Blueprints clothing line, as well as Hidden Gems thrift store. And I hate it. Seriously, this is cooking, so I do a little bit of everything.
Thank you very much, Barry. I'm going to respectfully ask everyone, unfortunately, because I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see everyone. Please mute yourself. Everyone, please mute yourself. If I have not called on you, I need you to stay muted. Otherwise, there is a backdrop, and we don't want that. Okay. So next, we'd like to bring in Bishop Dr. K. Donnell Smith. And Barry, thank you very much for that introduction.
Indeed.
Bishop, are you with us today? Let's see. Let me go back. I saw him in here. Oh.
Okay, I just unmuted.
Thank you.
All right. First, I want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate each and every one of you. It's a blessing to be here today. I see Miss Bernita Walker. Amen. Just love you guys. Of course, the brothers out here that I work with in the community. I am Bishop K. Donnell Smith, Senior Pastor of Greater Chosen Temple Christian Fellowship. I do a lot of work in the community. I am a gang intervention, what we call a community intervention prevention specialist now. I am a part of the Mayor's Crisis Response Team. Me being the pastor of the church that I pastor, it's not your ordinary typical churchy church. Our ministry is leading bangers to the Bible, harlots to holiness, and cripples to Christ, and going through reentry, and those are the type of members that we have at our church. Do a lot of outreach when it comes to, once again, community intervention. So I am the one that will go up under the yellow tape and take the mothers to see their children at the scene, and also a domestic violence counselor. And once again, just here to help and just talk about the domestic violence that's going on inside the home and out.
Thank you so very much, Bishop K. Donnell Smith. And next, man, our team is so powerful. These men are super powerful. And next we have Terry Boykins. He is the executive of business affairs for Street Positive out of San Bernardino. So Terry, can you join us?
Yeah, thank you, Candy. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you guys are safe. Terry Boykins, Executive Business Affairs, Street Positive, organization that was started back in 1997 after I had left corporate America. And I had left corporate America retired at the age of 26, having a chance to engage with a significant amount of stock options, Fortune 500 companies, coming back into the streets and realized that we had a lot of young black males that were not getting America to participate in the dream that I had a chance to do working with Fortune 500s. And I realized a lot of that had to do with trauma and the blockage that occurred with them to be able to be productive to pursue their dreams. And so as I began to deal with the trauma, somebody's got background, Andy?
Yes, I'm trying to get them to mute themselves. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're there. And so what I did, I began to pay attention as to why young black males were stuck financially and how trauma can impact you over the lifespan. And what we found out is that the average child that was impacted by childhood trauma would lose between $1.2 to $1.6 million over their lifespan, which when you start putting that into their retirement fund, with a 10% annualized return, they could be living off of $100,000, $120,000 a year passive income, but they couldn't get there because they couldn't process what had happened to them. And so they spend a lot of their time getting treatment versus getting a hustle on and trying to take care of their money business. And so I began to work with a commitment. And in that time period, I committed to 15 years to working with boys of color back in the early 90s. And that 15-year ran ended about 4 years ago. And the objective was to basically work with young black males that had been impacted by trauma, domestic violence, sexual assault, abuse, abandonment by their fathers. And that commitment basically allowed these individuals to have their retirement fully funded by the age of 35. Every one of them have cleared the bar. Every one of them are on with their families. I've seen them go from being 13 or 14-year-old boys to being young men that have the ability to take care of their families for the lifespan. And so I look forward to engaging with you and being with my brother that's on the panel today to, put some work on the street about this issue of domestic violence.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate you. And next we have Mr. Fluker. And Mr. Fluker is the co-founder and president of the Village Nation. And can I just say that not only am I honored to be among the presence of these men, but it is a pleasure because I've had an opportunity to work with them, and each one is stellar. But Mr. Fluker, he is the real. Each one of these gentlemen is the real, but I don't know, because I've had an opportunity to work with him a lot. So, Mr. Fluker, join us, please. We got to get Mr. Fluker off of mute. I've got you. Maybe not. All right. Nope.
I got it.
Yes, okay.
All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Queen Mother, thank you so much for the introduction and for putting this whole thing together. And to all my kings out there, tremendous ups. I'm listening to each and every one of you guys and the work that you do. Holy smokes, I am truly honored to be here on this panel with you guys. And to the guests, One Love, name is Fluker. Started my career through education over 35 years ago. I've been working with young men, young ladies, working with the African American community unapologetically. Bottom line is the Village Nation started 17 years ago, and we have been in several schools across the country. We were blessed to have made an appearance on Oprah, blessed to have spoken at Yale University, and to go into cities such as Detroit and New York and of course Los Angeles. And so we're blessed to be here today with you guys, and we're looking forward to this enriched conversation. I'm not going to go on too much because I want to get down to the nitty-gritty.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So let us go ahead and get on down to this nitty-gritty. So we've got a video we'd like you to enjoy.
Sound, Candy. No sound.
Oh,
What you look for?
Stop crying. Stop with the tears.
Don't cry.
Pick yourself up. Stop with the emotions.
Don't be a pussy.
Don't let nobody disrespect you. Be cool and be kind of a dick.
Always keep your mouth. Nobody likes a tattletale. Bros come before hoes.
Don't let your woman run your life.
You a bitch.
What a fag. Get laid. Do something.
Be a man. Be a man. Grow some balls.
The three most destructive words that every man receives when he's a boy is when he's told to be a man.
We've constructed an idea of masculinity in the United States that doesn't give young boys a way to feel secure in their masculinity, so we make them go prove it all the time.
Within their peer group culture, each of them is posturing based on how the other boys are posturing, and what they end up missing is what they each really want, which is just that closeness.
In good times, guys are like really close to each other, but when things get a little bit worse, you're on your own.
From middle school, I had 4 really close friends. Once I kind of went into high school, I struggle finding people I can talk to because I feel like I'm not supposed to get help.
Our kids get up every morning, they have to prepare their mask, how they're gonna walk to school. A lot of our students don't know how to take the mask off. What is it you don't let people see? Almost 90% of you have pain and anger on the back of that paper.
If you never cry, then you have all these feelings stuffed up inside of you, and then you can't get them out.
They really buy into a culture that doesn't value what we've feminized. If we're in a culture that doesn't value caring, doesn't value relationships, doesn't value empathy, you are going to have boys and girls, men and women go crazy.
I had anger issues in high school. I felt like an outcast.
I've been suspended at least once every year I was here.
We would just look for trouble and just like try to fight.
Boys are more likely to act out. They're more likely to become aggressive. Most people miss that as depression or see it as a conduct disorder or just a bad kid.
I felt like just giving up on life. You know, I actually had suicide thoughts in my head at 6th grade.
I felt alone for a long time, and I actually thought about killing myself.
Whether it's homicidal violence or suicidal violence, people resort to such desperate behavior only when they are feeling shamed and humiliated, or feel they would be if they didn't prove that they were real men.
If you're told from day one, don't let nobody disrespect you, and this is the way you handle it as a man, respect is linked to violence.
If I can man up, why step down from that? You feel me?
It's like instinct.
So man up. Man up.
Man up.
Man up. Oh, some freaking balls.
Act like a man.
Be a man.
Be a man.
For my kids, I was gonna end this hyper-masculine narrative here.
Wow. So before we move on, I just want to remind everyone, if you could please mute yourself. If you have any comments, please feel free to include them in the chat and we will definitely address them. So I like our gentlemen, our guest experts to please give us a little feedback on that video. Barry, I see you.
I guess I'll jump in first. The video speaks volumes because those words are powerful, and words speak truth in so many people's lives. And the words that you hear are usually sometimes the words that you become. So when you think about the idea, as I was growing up, and we were talking about it with my brothers, I remember there was a point in time where the objectivity of me looking at women were projected by the music I was listening to. And I come from the era where they define the bitch word, right? So you heard Too Short and the Eazy-E's and Ice Cubes of the world. Those who don't know the old school Ice Cube was the bitch getter in so many frames. We see him in a different light because Ice Cube is a perfect example when a Negro turns into a man, but the reality of what he was before was a project of things that he's seen and things he adapted to, and that was the culture that we were involved with. So the idea when you hear these words and this personality that you have to take on as a young black male, myself, I used to call myself Smooth B, because Barry Accius wasn't proficient or sufficient enough to get the girls, to get the camaraderie, or to get the kind of experience that I felt a young black male was supposed to have. So a lot of times when we sit there and we try to define ourselves, we try to define ourselves from words, and those words usually come from peer interaction or what's around our environment.
Right, absolutely.
Yes. So Barry, I want to just piggyback on some of the things you said, and some of the things that I caught from that piece. What being a man, be a man. I think the question is lost with what is a man, and I think that's where we begin to have a struggle with our young men, with our old men, with men in period, losing the understanding, the definition of what that is. And there's so many factors as to why that is. It's not because of, and we got to be careful that we never slip up and start blaming the victim. You got to understand that the roots of this whole thing start so far back in terms of how we were stolen and how essentially who we were, our identity, and the process of becoming a man, which others might call the process of becoming a man was lost completely, and it was replaced in this void by these Western standards of what a man is. And that's just how we began to get it all twisted up. But at the end of the day, you have these brothers and sisters in society that are giving these twisted ideas of what a man is. And we was all speaking about the other day, for us that are males, we were always in search of one thing, and that was evidence of our manhood. If the first facial hair we got, we was like putting an eyeliner on it, sticking it out. The first vein we got on our muscle, we flexed it. We was looking for evidence of what we talk about in terms of being a manhood. And sometimes that evidence for us and the way it was delivered to us came with how many 40s you can drink, or how many blunts you can smoke, or how many fights you can get in, or how many girls you can impregnate. And that distorted view of what a man is.
I can hear it now.
And that distorted view of what a man is has permeated throughout our community, throughout our youth.
I'm about to mute it right now.
And so that's part of what the challenge that we have right now is. It's a ramification of all that.
I tell you this too. Go ahead, Bishop.
No, go ahead. I yield to you, my brother. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. One of the things that I know for a fact that a man will never tell a boy to man up.
That's right.
A male will tell you a boy to man up, but a man will never tell a boy to man up because he knows the rites of passage.
That's right.
And a man will basically help develop that boy. So the words that comes from a male to tell a boy to man up is missing the process by which he is to become in his own skin. And so a man will basically help cultivate that boy into his manhood process. And this is where we have to be very careful about what we are listening to and who is getting that information into the ears of our boys. Because if you have a male that's telling a boy to man up, that male has missed something in his own life.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has not processed him. Somebody has not pledged him properly to basically undo those requests that he has of a boy. And so a lot of this has to do with, and, you right on the button with regards to the words. And, Barry, you hit it right on the button in terms of, how these words begin to define our community.
Yes.
And then we end up having situations come up where a woman begins to look at a male figure as a man when it becomes a certain age, it has certain features, and she gets herself into trouble because that boy has been forced into a being that she's not ready to deal with.
Wow, that's pretty
All
deep.
right. Yeah. Going back to the video with the term "man up," just going back from me as a baby in the '60s. Once again, I was mentioning to the brothers yesterday that there wasn't the term "man up." It was just, you are a strong black man. I came from the Black Panther Party. Once again, my father was Mtafiti, my mother was Sharifu, up under the Angela Davis thing at Southwest College. But my name was Damu, means blood in Swahili. But it was more like, you are a strong black man. So it wasn't the term "man up," but I was taught as a strong black man to protect our black women. So there was violence involved, and I would say not really violence, but anger on protecting our community and protecting what was going on back in the '60s. So when I hear the term now, "man up," I've even, I'm guilty of it. I got a grandson, and he be crying and acting like a little baby boy. Man up. But my definition of that was from what was instilled in me as being strong, being that powerful man to be able to protect our women, to be able to protect our community. That's how I looked at it, as the term now, "man up," not with the I would say the mentality of, just be strong. You don't let nobody see you weak. Nothing like that. It was more like, look, you got to be out here to be a strong black man to protect our people. That's how I looked at it. That's how I was taught coming up.
Well, I think that when I think we got to be careful, because though I agree with a lot of what is being said, I don't think "man up" is necessarily a wrong terminology. I just think that it's wrong in a sense of when we are actually saying it. Because I think that when you come of age, it's time to say, hey, 21-year-old, it's time to man up. You can't continue to be
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You can't continue to be your 13-year-old self when you're now having to mature. I believe that we can't look at that in stages. And sometimes in a sense of when we're telling young men who have kind of adulted a little bit earlier than maybe some of the average young man, because you got to think about it. A lot of our young males, the reason why it's so sophisticated outside of what my OG is saying as far as the long-term effects of enslavement and being captured and victimized by all those things that white supremacy has done for us, we have to look at terms of right now. A lot of our young men especially have swung into adulthood a lot earlier than we would like them to. Yeah. So in sometimes they understand those kind of languages and they don't understand everything else. But yeah, I do think one of the deadliest things that affect our young black males to this day right now is this certain term. And that term is real nigga. I don't even use the N-word, but when I use it because I want to have real shock treatment. That word, real nigga, is more dangerous than man up, is more dangerous than any of those words that we just saw in that video. Real nigga. A real nigga is going to get you killed. A real nigga will have you on drugs. A real nigga going to have you in jail. And that terminology that for our young black brothers, they try to embrace as if it's almost a code or it's a badge of real honor and manhood. And you hear it even in our adult males, I'm a real ass nigga. Well, what is the definition of that? What is the definition of a real nigga? Who is a real nigga? Because if I define a real nigga, I'm seeing it from a more negative perspective. And what they'll do, and for those who have kind of made it to be a real nigga with money, they'll say, no, a real nigga is Little Bootsy. And I'll say, well, look, Little Bootsy, real nigga, is telling it's okay for a 12-year-old to get head from an adult woman. So we have to be careful. The definitions that our kids adopt because of those. And there are some adults, a majority adults, that continue to live in this Peter Pan theory of still being young, but of age of an adult, are saying, I am a real nigga, and this is what a real nigga does. And that is the most dangerous thing as far as words and power that affect our young black males, in my perspective.
Absolutely.
Totally agree, brother.
That ain't even a perspective. Those are facts.
Thank you, my G.
Those are facts.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So gentlemen, this is some real serious conversation, and I truly appreciate it. So I do want to hear about that one feeling that boys and men are allowed.
Yeah, I want to speak on that. You know, we as men, we growing up being males to begin with and trying to evolve into men, because there's a distinct difference between males and men. But as we're taking that journey, the only feeling that society, that the structure, the network allows us to express really for anything that goes on is anger. That's the only permissible one. In fact, in many circles, that's part of being a man. That's the one flex muscle you got to be able to show is your ability to be angry, and what's closely tied. And being angry in and of itself is not an issue, which there's lots of things to be angry about. Okay, but converting that anger into violence, that's where that's the difference right there. And so that's one of the only things that as men we are really allowed to express. And I was told once upon a time ago that if your only tool is a hammer, you'll treat all your problems as if they were nails. For a lot of brothers, these are their nails. Down there, over there, right there. And anybody that's in front of that is their nails.
Excuse me, just 1 second, please. Whoever is speaking, please put yourself on mute.
Next door to the croissant spot.
No, we don't want to know about next door to the croissant spot. Please put yourself on mute.
And get me.
Berries.
Talk to my guy, says, you know, your guy that always asks for the
Barry. It's Barry.
Yeah.
That always asks for the
Barry.
Let me see. Is that Barry?
Yeah, your phone on mute. Put your phone on mute.
Barry.
He went right to it.
Everybody.
There you go.
That always
No. There you go.
Okay.
Are we good? Okay.
We're good. I'm sorry.
No problem. No, I was just saying that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Barry, put it on mute.
But Candy, if you the host, you can mute everybody.
Yeah, it's just that there's so many people getting back and forth to people is difficult, but I've already done that. Go ahead.
No problem. So I was just saying that one has to develop their tool belt, and so they don't just have a hammer. And the process of becoming a man, you start picking up more tools, and so you use a proper tool for the proper situation, the proper scenario.
Okay, Terry, let's talk about that anger and how that anger equates into violence, especially intimate partner violence, and especially from a teen's perspective, a teen young man.
You know, and I'm gonna go back to the boardroom because I know in corporate America that the objective is to make the money. So if I can create an environment to make you believe that something is your rep or your street cred, and if I can capitalize on that, I can put
His screen froze.
All right. So while we wait for Terry to come back from being in screen freeze, so Bishop, are you with us still?
Yes.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about intimate partner violence and anger?
Well, from my experiences, well, we already know, anger is an emotion. I like how Fluke, Mr. Fluker said it yesterday. that it was okay to be angry. It's just how you exemplified it afterward, because we know that it's an emotion. From the clients that I have, and even from my experience, is growing up once again around certain type of anger, not domestic violence type where it was male and female, but just the anger of community and just the things that I was surrounded by being a product of my environment. But on an intimate level, I just know that that conversation is about, are you safer at home? There's a lot of dynamics that's going on now within the last 3 months with this pandemic that hasn't been going on, you know, before, because of the time spent together. That, let's just say, all the time spent together now compared to being away from 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever the case may be. But I'm seeing now that the anger is coming from the being confined to a person every day, all day, not being able to have that let loose, that retreat to get out. Then I noticed now that the verbiage that's happening, when I was going back to Barry Accius was saying, when you use certain terms, those are trigger words that really cause, going back to the manhood thing, and I don't mean to be all over the place, but I'm just trying to put like some clients I've been speaking to and talking to about the, you know, counseling. There's some trigger words that can really make a woman and man just lose it. Mm-hmm. And I hear these words and I say, well, what if she called you a tree compared to a bee? What would that, are you really going to let that send you to the penitentiary for the next 20 years? And I have some men that say, yeah, because I'm not no bee. I just fought this fight. I'm strong. I'm a man. This is this. You know, so with the intimate relationship that's going on inside the house now, I am seeing more of it. I am getting more calls, but I realize that it's just about that, them words that are being triggered that are causing people to really just lose their mind and get into violence. That's what I'm seeing.
Thank you. So we have a couple of guests that, or excuse me, we have a couple of guests that want to jump in. So Andre Christian, can you please jump in? You said you have a question.
No, I had a comment, and you know, all the conversation is good right now because we come from different backgrounds, but I feel, and that's why I try to just teach them respect, because when it comes to a man, it's going to be defined on how you was raised up, what books you read, what community you came from, and then you're going to start pushing that issue. So once we come to the realization, being positive is being a man, being strong, different virtues, and when you break it down to respect, you don't have to say wearing brown shoes instead of pink shoes is this, that just might be the way you came up your culture pretty much, but respect is clear across the board. So as you start teaching them respect, just respect men, women, everybody, period, then you start digging into the deeper stuff and issues they have. Because if you tell me at 40 or 50 years old that doing this and that is not a man, and I highly respect my father, my grandfather, and everybody else, I'm gonna have a problem with that. And my father and my grandfather could have been wrong in 2 left shoes. So I say that to say, if I'm gonna take a whole lot of time trying to tell you about being a man and how to be a man, and I might be connecting that to how I was raised, that's gonna turn into conflict. So I just say that once again, I know I said it already, but respect. Teach that first, and then let everything else trickle on down with violence and different stuff that go with it.
So we're going to definitely have that conversation, and the men are going to talk about that. Let me just bring a couple of things into the conversation that is in the chat box. And Miss Bernita Walker says we got to go back to the foundations because they're not solid. And that leads back to where my brother Fluker was talking about our history, the historical trauma that has led us to here today. It is not a solid foundation that we are on, and we were talking about that last week. And Arvis Jones is talking about unresolved grief and loss. And Arvis, you'll be happy to know that in the next couple of weeks, in 2 weeks to be exact, we're going to be talking about grief. There's so many different layers. When we talk about violence, abuse, and trauma, there's no way that we can have one conversation over an hour and a half that's going to touch everything. We would be all over the place. We'd have like one little teeny sound bite. And so we're definitely going to be talking about it. And Just for matter of fact, next week we're going to be talking about those who are from the reentry population and how COVID-19 has impacted them, as well as the following week we'll be talking about grief and loss. And so I really appreciate all of the comments and the feedback that is in this chat. And someone has asked, are we going to be sharing this presentation? You will absolutely get this presentation tomorrow, and you will have this video in addition to the fact that it will be stored on our YouTube page. And one last comment, and then we'll move on and have the gentleman continue to speak. The historical trauma cannot be dismissed in any of our conversations. Absolutely not. Every conversation that we have as Black Americans, Black people, African Americans, however we identify, we definitely have to continue to have that conversation. And so, wait, did we cover all of that? So I think we were talking yesterday about anger, this word anger. And I don't know if Barry is still with us. You know, for those of you who are like, what's going on, Candy? When you are leading this conversation, you cannot see everyone. You can only see like 3 or 4 people because you're sharing your screen. And so, Barry, are you still with us? Because you had made a statement about anger yesterday and about it being a pro or a con.
Yeah, I'm still with y'all. I think that, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you think about it personally, and I'm going to my personal self, I was angry because I didn't fit in. I didn't know how to fit in. I am Haitian. I'm not, you know, African American. I'm Haitian American. And the reason why I'm considered Haitian American because I was born in the States and both my parents were Haitian. So I was growing up around a bunch of African Americans that looked just like me, had the same conversation, dialect, different family backgrounds, but I was ostracized because of my cultural difference. And that's what I have learned when I'm in this world coming from New York to the greater Bay Area, where I was going to a Catholic school that my father felt would be the better result of getting education and me and my brother having a chance in this society, but going back home to an area that was predominantly Black when we first came up, and folks making jokes about me because not only of the fact that I go to a Catholic school with pretty much white folks, but as well as making fun of me and the different languages my family would speak. And I was almost like shocked because I was like, well, I'm Black. I'm Blacker than some of y'all. And they're like, nah, you ain't Black. You know, you a Haitian booty snatcher. I remember that in first grade, right? And that not being around and understanding who I was at that particular time, that affected me, that made me angry, and that anger continued to make me want to fit in again to that real nigga that they wanted to project on me. So I think some of the time when we look at the anger and where it stems from, a lot of that anger stems from childhood experiences. And I think that we do a bad job not assessing our young people, looking at all of their history, not the current right now, but the projected history before they got to this point. And I see that often happen where you're just looking at a kid's behavior as being that moment, but not understanding historically what happened to that kid. Did something happen to them in grade school? Did something happen to them in 6th grade? Because none of our kids grow up to be killers. Let's be clear. None of our kids grow up to be killers. There's something that triggers that kind of anger. And when we talk about foundation of how this kind of happens, the one thing that saved my life was my father had a foundation of cement. Regardless of how I was acting and behaving, I saw that foundation of cement, of steel, bricks. A lot of our kids now are having foundations made of water and sand. And you can't have that in mud. You can't have that when these kids, as I've said before, we wash these kids up and we bring them right back to the same dirty house because we're not trying to figure out the triggers of some of these young people's anger.
Absolutely. And before we move any further, I really want to just take a moment to talk about how words steal, kill, and destroy. And people hate when I say this, but is our parents. It's the people who are supposed to love us that starts off with the worst damage. You know, it is very damaging for a child to wake up and know that the person who's supposed to love them, even if they do love them, is calling a stupid mofo, a dumb mofo. And so it's difficult. It is very difficult to walk into manhood or even to womanhood knowing that you've been called a little bitch all your life or you a stupid mofo. And so we have to learn how to change the narrative and change the conversation and learn how to love ourselves and how to respect ourselves. But then it does go all the way back to that historical trauma that we're living with and dealing with that has allowed us not to love ourselves, or for someone who looks just like me, my same color, my same size, to call me black and make me feel bad about it. So these are a lot of things that our young men and little boys are going to deal with. How is it that we're going to change our future if we continue to break our children?
May I speak to that, Ms. Lewis?
Yes, please.
Yes. You know, you talked about, brother earlier, Christian talked about respect, and respect is definitely needed, but probably all that starts with self-respect. And you just mentioned about loving yourself. You just spoke about loving yourself. It's difficult to love yourself if you don't know yourself. And so from the gate, when we release our children to these schools, and we give that power to a school system that has not served them correctly, to teach them about themselves. And the first encounter in that school system of themselves is seeing themselves as a slave. That's right there sets the psyche in a place, in a dark place where you don't want to be, you don't want to be about. And so it sets the path for many of our youth into a path of self-destruction. And it becomes a predetermined destiny. And so the only way to shake that is if us as parents, us as healthy adults, we put our arms around these kids, we bring them in, we speak with them, we provide safe places, and we clean up that dirty spot that Barry talks about them going back to. Because ain't nobody else going to clean it up for us. Ain't nobody else going to clean it up for us. So we got to do that.
That's real talk. Keisha Jones says we have to be mindful, and even in our angriest moments, we have to speak life into our children. That's real talk.
Yes.
So I want to move this conversation talking about the breeding ground of anger. What does that look like? And we've already talked about it a lot in personal and even in family, but what does that look like in community? And Barry, you said something real, like I don't even know if people caught what you said, but you were talking about this foundation, you know, and we clean them up and then we take them back into a dirty environment. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I think that what behooves me when I've worked just in the community for being with Voice of the Youth as I created in 2008, but having at least 2 decades under my belt of just working in community, right? With juveniles and whatnot. It always makes me laugh when we always attack one of the problems, right? They expect us workers to fly like Superman with little to no access, little to no monies, and come into these places that have generations and generations of dysfunction, and our 1 year or maybe 2 years, maybe even a 6-month program is going to fix these young people that have been dysfunctionally in cycles of generational anger, poverty, depression, and mental illness, and we're just going to be the miracle workers without fixing certain things in a household. I always found it peculiar when we would take the child, fix the child, and bring them back to the same broken parent. I would like laugh at that. So what are we doing with the parent? And my colleagues and I, we always made sure that anything that we did community-wise, we would always involve the parents. Yes, we're gonna have our young people have their separate things, but we connect with the parents because the needs of the parents have to be served to effectively support the needs of the child. Because I found so many different times working with a young child, getting that anger off that child, the anger of that child came from the parent. It came from the parent that wasn't able to pay the bills. It came from a parent that was in a broken relationship. It came from a parent that was in an abusive relationship. It came from a parent that couldn't keep a job. A lot of these things that you could not control to deal with the kids didn't even come from the kid. It came from the root and the foundation. So when we attack the problem, we have to attack the problem. And when we ask for the monies, we have to ask for the monies, not just to balance the child, but to balance the whole environment. You can nurture someone all you want, but if their nature is ugly, gray, cloudy, and stormy, you are going to still be a victim of whatever tragedy is here to come. So I think the anger comes from a lot of our young black male who cannot express themselves. It's too much anger to express. Because it's not just one thing, it's just not two things, it's multiple things. And when we start asking for real monies to help our community, it has to be dealing with health, it has to deal with economics, it has to deal with the school system, it has to deal with the poverty. Because we cannot continue to think that our work is only with the children and everything else can be the same. Because I know now with the weapons of mass destruction, and I'm going to hold them up right now, this nice cell phone that has all this social media, things that a lot of us weren't affected by because our family could turn it off. Our children are being exposed by too many things. And now black children, not only black males, but black females as well, are leading in suicides. That back in my days, it was almost unheard of a black child killing themselves, especially a black male. Every time you heard suicides, one of them white boys done did it again. But you gotta look at that extreme of we cannot solve the anger if we don't help solve the anger in that household, whoever is in that household helping that young child grow.
So Barry, you're talking about a holistic approach. You're talking about fighting this octopus, right? With all these tentacles.
Talk to that octopus. I want to hear that octopus. Break it down, kid.
Every one of those tentacles that you just described is exactly what we're up against. And so no simple or ill-funded or single lane approach is going to be able to take down an octopus. Because if you just grab one tentacle, the other seven are going to beat you to death. So I can feel you with what you're saying. And so your holistic approach is looking at all the entities that surround this child, the family, and the community in which they live in, and how we're going to systematically and strategically attack the entire problem and not just go for a gut shot. And the funding and the opportunities they put in Band-Aid solutions on tourniquet problems. You feel me? And, yes, sir. And so that's got to end.
And, and I apologize, everybody. I guess we had a little power outage here. But, I wanted to come back into that breeding ground issue. Very right on point, Fluke. When I was working with these young black boys, and boys of color, I was going into houses where moms was turning tricks, moms was dealing, moms was making money while they was at school. And so sometimes the son would have to come across a man that had just paid his mama.
Wow.
So if you understand the mindset of a sixth grader, of a seventh grader, in his growing body that's coming across a grown man coming out of the house smelling like his mama.
That's right.
Now you think about what that does to his psyche in terms of anger, because daddy's gone, mama trying to do the best she can, and there's another man in the house again. And so, I don't know about you, but that will mess with my psyche if I'm coming home from the 6th or 7th or the 8th grade, passing a man that's bumping me and trying to send me a signal about manning up. And so, dealing with the anger, I think we have to also ask, one of the things I asked all the young men I did this 15 years with, I had a chance, and you're right with regards to the parent issue, and I had the parents ask their sons, what do you think about me? And have the child get involved with the narrative of where they're trying to take the family and the respect of the family. And some of the messages and some of the conversation that was met by a lot of tears when the son started telling his mama or his daddy how he felt about their condition. And it was just real. You know, I don't like that you hoeing, mama. I don't like that you have to pay the bills like this. Daddy, I like you being gone all the time. I don't like to have to, you know, see you coming back and forth between, you know, your other family's house and our house. And so you got a lot of mixed signals that gets transferred into anger, that gets transferred into seeking some kind of belonging, that gets transferred into being.
Man, that's good too.
Terry gets so deep and then we lose him.
Oh, that was too good. Cliffhanger.
Man.
Dun, dun, dun.
But you know, it is real, because what makes it really deep is you often hear, especially if there is no man in the home, that a woman will tell her son of any age, he could be 3 years old, that you have to be the man of the house. Right. And then you got another man who comes in the house who's now bringing some money or bringing drugs or bringing food or bringing, okay, he bringing, you know, his whole package and he's slinging it on his mama. I'm gonna just keep it like that. And then that little boy is no longer the man. So he's now being outsourced and he's not happy about that. And that creates a whole nother trauma as well.
Hey, Barry, was it Drake that said grandma died, now I'm the man in the house?
You know what? I don't know if it was Drake, but I remember that line. Yeah. But you know, the thing about all of that situation, I think, and I'm very extremely hard on my brothers, because I feel, and this is my heart, and I know there's all different kind of situations, but I don't feel there should be no way, if you are a man breathing, and I can't even speak to you as a man if you're not taking care of your seed. Yes. I will not have no black man come with the excuses about this, that, because I done had my baby mama drama, and me, my baby mama, and I, you know, we just call each other that, so no disrespect on it, but you know, we're great friends. You know, she's a part of my business, right? You know, she works for me part-time, and we've gone through our ups and downs, but all my daughter knows is us co-parenting, and we've done a great job with our 23-year-old daughter co-parenting. But I feel that I'm going to put this on us men. I'm not even going to talk about women making bad decisions with men, because it happens. I'm not going to speak upon that since it's all men here discussing it. I'm going to look at us, because we chose who we slept with to have what we had, regardless of whatever moment that was. And when that child comes, whether you like her, love her, hate her, you got to figure out a way to make sure you are fully engaged in that child's life. And I don't know if you have to go through court. I don't know if you have to have 100 different sit downs with that mother of your child to figure out how you guys can come to a reasonable, a progressive relationship to take care of that child. But I'd say a percentage of our issues right now, especially for the young black male, besides the nurture that they see and peer pressure, is not having quality, real models, meaning real men. I'm not saying role models, I say real models in the household. Quality black men. That's not with that riffraff, was not with the trying to keep up with you and keep up with the Joneses, but is really being a man, whether they're the father of the child or being a participant in that child's life. The problem is men have lost that will and have given up on our children. And they have given up on our children to sit there and almost ask, well, who gonna help me? Because this problem ain't gonna fix itself. The white man ain't coming to fix it. The problem gotta come be fixed with our young children is with stronger black men. And I push Negroes on being stronger components and fathers. I don't want to hear the excuses, because we've all had our moments, make better decisions. But if we want to be the kings of the household, if we want to be respected, and here's that word respect, we have to show that we have the ability to not only with the mother or without the mother to raise our children. Because I'm not going to put it all on the moms. I can't. Because there was a man that left that seed in the womb. And if that man has not come back to participate in a real way. And that means giving up your selfish ambitions. Let me be very clear. Giving up your selfish ambitions. That means that if you was being foul, by the time that kid comes of age, you got to stop being foul. Because so many of the men continue to think that they can gamble with both lives. I learned in my life, as I was gambling, it ain't going to work. It's going to be one or the other. So we have to start making real men decisions to say to ourselves, and this is where I say man up, that brothers have to man up, step up, and be kings of the household, whether we're with the mother or not.
I agree, and I accept that challenge, my brother. You know, we talk about mentoring, and mentoring is not that complex. It's mentoring. It's men taking people under their arm and taking them for a tour of life and what life challenges offers. I'm gonna steal that. That's yours, boss. That's yours. And here's the deal, though. But history has taught us that. When you look back on the continent, you look at the Maasai warriors. Two fierce Maasai warriors are one of the most fierce, respected warriors on the planet Earth. They still study their tactics because they're one of the only armies that were able to defeat the British Army and the British invasions with spears and shields against musket and cannon, the Maasai warriors. And when these two men who don't have children encounter one another on the plains or in the jungles of Africa, what they say to each other, they don't say what's up. They don't say how you doing. They don't say you look good or how's it going. What they say to each other literally translates into these words: how are the children? That's how two men who have no children greet each other. Imagine if we created a society, a village, a community in which men took that type of stance and said, how are the children? First things first, because nothing else matters. Nothing else matters.
That's real. I just want to bring in a comment that was made. With over 19 million children living without a father in the home or father figure that is engaged in his life, it is perhaps one of the biggest social community ills facing America today.
Yes, no doubt. And we'll pay for that. We will pay for that greatly.
We are paying for that.
Yes.
I mean, when you, I just want to just add this, when you look at all the missing Black girls, when you look at all the domestic violence in our community that I've seen timelessly, I created She Could Be My Daughter as a part of a branch for Voice of the Youth to address that in the Black community. When you see pedophilia being committed by so-called artists that we embrace, like Little Bootsy, and we just kind of don't say nothing about it, or we celebrate it as if, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, Negro. That's a real nigga right there. I mean, we are part of the cycle of madness. We're condoning behavior. And there's not enough Black men that say, hey, it's okay. Here's a word that I want to use for Black males: transitioning. That's not what we look at when we see each other. I have to transition from this 14-year-old, this 18-year-old, to this 21-year-old, to this 30-year-old. And as I see some of my OGs on here, to the OG status. And when young men see, wait, Negro, you the same Negro when I was 14, you was 21, being the same man at 35, at 40. And when we have examples like that, again, we don't have enough real models. It's going to be a treacherous trap that we are paying for with our lives as we speak.
Absolutely.
That's the truth. So Bishop, I see you've been trying to jump up in this conversation. I see you have something to say. Come on, bring it in.
I mean, because I want to, because every it's a beautiful, beautiful dialogue. I definitely agree 100%. Speaking so truly on us Black fathers stepping up to the plate. But I say that because I advocate for the Black men that are in prison, and they want to be out here with their children, and also speaking to the mothers that are out here by themselves trying to raise these young Black men. And I wanted to stay focused on, are you safer at home? And I say that because I was listening to Andre Christian, that's my brother,
wow.
Mr. Lowdown, but he spoke on the word respect.
Yes.
And speaking on the word on respect, I always have to go back because I'm trying to find a solution on how we can help our brothers and our mothers that's in the homes by themselves with their children, and this violence that's going on in the house right now. Are they safer at home? So I was kind of staying focused on that. So going back in my day growing up, you could not walk past those beads if there's grown folks talking. You could not be in a conversation if you heard grown folks talking, or they wasn't cussing and fussing and talking in front of you. So when it goes back to the respect factor, now you have this generation of parents, mothers and fathers, that are actually feeding them that anger. They're letting them, even I've seen some of the people that work in the community, when they say they're going to help this young man or help this young woman, then they'll put them in the car with a little caseload, but they still putting on the cussing and the be this, the be that, the be this and be that. So you're actually feeding them that anger, and we're supposed to be taking them away to show them something different. But I was saying that to say, when it comes to respect, I love how Mr. Fluker said, we got to respect ourselves first, because we can't say that we're going to help this young brother and we're going to show him something different and we're doing the same old thing. So it all comes back to how are we going to stop this violence? We got to show them another way. And how we show them another way is let them listening to this rap music calling them bees or just talking crazy. But once again, it goes back to the generation. I spoke about it yesterday. You know, you had the drug of choice. It was a different drug of choice back in the 60s and the 70s, but mothers still kept food on the table and the roof over their child head. And then that 80s era came, the mothers and fathers start selling those kids. But now those 80s kids are now parents that did not have any parenting. So they're teaching a little 2-year-old girl to come in here and twerk in front of their friend and listening to this music with the little, showing the little, you see the videos all on the internet, the girls 2 years old, 3 years old, dancing like they on a pole. This is the problem that we having with the parenting, where the kids are automatically gonna have anger because they don't want to see that. They're being taught that. So when they're being taught that, we can't blame the kids for this anger or the anger inside the home. We got to get to the parents and teach them and let them know they have to be the ones that step up and go back into the old grandmother's roots. And if they don't know because they didn't have it then, we have to now, just like now, our caseload used to be 12 to 16-year-olds. Now our caseload at the school start at 5 years old. But now we got to go to these 20 and 30-year-old parents and let them know this is not what you should let your child be listen to. If you don't want this violence and you don't want them to grow up with this domino effect of going into the prison system and having so much anger, you got to stop feeding them that negativity. And that's what I'm trying to get to the point where this stuff got to stop, and it starts in the home. It starts in the home. But now we got to get to the parent.
And that is exactly why we say violence and abuse actually begins in the womb. And as Ms. Bernita Walker says, we can only teach people what we know. And we are our own worst enemies. And you said these 20 and 30-year-old parents, and I'm here to say these 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old parents and these 30, 35-year-old grandparents. But Mr. Terry is back with us. Terry, we were holding on for you. We was waiting for you to come back in.
Yeah, I'm back. But you know, when I come back in, I guess there's a lot of power outage. So Edison's doing some work out here. But you know, what Bishop just mentioned, and I didn't catch the other part of Barry and what Fluke has said, but we have young men that are angry. And we have young men that are angry for the reasons that Bishop just mentioned. And I can tell you for a fact, I've talked to young boys that were angry at their mothers. And they were angry at their mothers, and then they began to justify why their daddies left their mama and began to become angry at both of them. And then begin to come into situations where no one's ever taught him about being in a relationship or respecting a young lady, you know, talking about the dating violence. And so he then begins to snap because of what he doesn't know how to deal with. He hasn't had the proper clinical support with regards to mental health. He may have a situation where there's some cultural disparities of people not understanding him, that don't look like him, that's trying to educate him. to basically grow up to be a man, to compete in an unfair system, but they don't get it. And so he's processing all this. But what he does know, he knows about that basketball court. He knows about that football field. He knows about that track competition. But that's his outlet until he doesn't have that available to him anymore. And now he's got to deal with whatever he's got to deal with, and that's real. And that daddy may not be there. Mama's trying to do the best she can with what she got. And I don't like the dudes that she's keeping company with. And now I got this young lady that is really consoling to me that I'm digging after school. But, you know, I can't handle her being looked at by somebody else. Then I got to get on her case and I got to slap her around a little bit to let her know that I'm the one that's got to basically give you, you got to give your attention to. And this is really where it starts in this whole process of him coming in contact with somebody that doesn't know his unresolved. And if we don't get a chance as men to catch that, whether that's Sancho, who's at home with the mama, or somebody else is holding down, if we as men in the community continue to be afraid of our boys and don't pull them aside,
that's right,
and try to understand what they're trying to do, because they're not born like that in terms of, in terms of the womb. And when I say in terms of born, in terms of them not wanting some kind of nurturing. I have yet to see, and I think I've probably looked at Satan maybe once or twice in my lifetime, but I have yet to see a young man who doesn't want someone to nurture. I have seen tears come out of many eyes with young men that just were hurt and they just didn't know how to get from point A to point B because of what they were dealing with in anger. And then it goes into relationships. And we have to basically begin to talk. And as Bishop Donnell talked about when we were at Loyola Marymount, talking about domestic violence, is that on the other side of this, we've got to stop sending our young ladies into the path of danger with these young boys who are angry. And you got these young ladies that are looking for affirmation, but they don't understand you are walking into a missile, a loaded bomb. And so this is where the parenting issue comes in, because now the little girl gets pregnant, she's got one, and now the cycle repeats itself, and we don't really catch each other before they run into each other. And then once that anger starts exploding, now we start being in the pension business, because now the police department got to increase their payroll to deal with our communities, and that's somebody else's retirement, because the issues that we haven't dealt with. We get to fund somebody else's retirement because of the issues we have not dealt with in our communities.
That's real. That's real. And I want to thank Mr. Donnell Monday, who has been giving some real deep gems in the comments. He was just talking about, it starts with, there's liquor stores and weed shops. And if it's not that, there's always something that's going to distract us. And even talking about the little girl twerking, and he said, which was real deep, that it's not cute for the 18-year-old and it's not cute for the 3-year-old. But let me tell you, time is flying. Time flies when we have these conversations. We've got about 20 minutes left in this conversation, and I do want to talk about strategies. But before we get into the strategies, let us, Mr. Fluker, can you talk to us about this statue? And let me just read it. That the statue was, the statue of the sun was made from removed parts from statue of the father. And that represent what the parents do to build the lives of their children. Can you talk about that, please?
Sure. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This statue, the taller one, as you can see, is representing the father, has holes in it, and his parts, those parts of that father is used to construct the son. And so one of the challenges we have as a community is making sure that that father is a healthy person to begin with. Because if he's unhealthy, he's going to pass that unhealthiness down to his child. And I'm talking about psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so that's really, really important that we understand that, that those traits, those habits, you know, sermons, and Bishop, you could attest to this. Sermons are better seen than heard. In other words, hearing you telling me, who taught you to smoke like that while you puffing a cigarette or puffing a stogie is not going to work. Or who taught you to hit someone like that? Gee, Mom, I don't know who I got that idea from. So your sermons are better seen than heard. We can preach all day long and talk all day long, but if you see me doing dirt out there in the streets, all that I might have said goes to nothing. So as parents, when we're called to that amazing blessing, we got to understand the responsibilities that come along with that. And to those young parents out there, we got to reach out to them and give them some guidance through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So gentlemen, in our last 15 minutes, can you please talk about what are some of the strategies for prevention? And people were watching this also on Facebook, and earlier one of the comments was about sports. And how can we positively engage young men and young women because we're seeing the violence and it is escalating all across the board. And we are specifically talking about Black kids today, but this is all across the board for all kids. What can we do to prevent violence and abuse, or maybe even to build the esteem of a youth?
The unfortunate part
about, me starting out real brief.
Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead. I yield to you, my brother.
Okay. It's the unfortunate part is we usually justify what we normalize. So I think with some of the behavior that we see so often, we have to identify that that's not normal behavior. Like what we see throughout our culture, and it's hard pressed to say that the Black community really has communities like we used to, because I don't think that when you talk about other communities, they don't have they're not riddled with violence. They're not riddled with liquor stores. They're not riddled, and this is no disrespect to the bishop, with a bunch of churches outside of anything else but, churches and, sufficient things that can help, move this community further. I think that a lot of the times we try to figure out like these sophisticated ways of dealing with our young people, and I don't really think that it's as sophisticated as they try to create. I think some of the times it's just simply giving your time, providing opportunities for young people. Right after this call, I'm meeting with 7 of my young people, and we're going to go into my office and we're going to clean out the office, and we're going to talk about quarantining. We're going to talk about what they've been doing throughout the time period, giving them access and giving them resource besides yourself. I think sometimes with the work that we do, we put it on ourselves that we are going to be the supermen and superwomen of this work. And if the child doesn't go through us, the child won't be saved, the child won't be protected. You have to be able to drop seeds, allow those seeds to grow as you water it, and hope that the seeds that you drop in the foundation, it will build the child. And sometimes you have to be okay with that child making mistakes, because eventually those seeds that you continue to put in that child and you continue to water to help allow it to grow, they'll figure it out. It happened to me with my father. Half the things he was telling me, I had no idea. But as I grew older as a man, having my own child, I understood the lessons. So I think the Superman mentality we have to kind of get rid of, and the idea of attacking these young people with the mental health, conditioning their self-esteem, it will play into the psyche of what we do. And especially what Fluke has been constantly saying, the narrative changes when we let them know historically they came from greatness. Historically, they came from greatness, not from slavery. We have to be able to indoctrinate the truth of their history and help line that out to their current future.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. What are my other brothers?
I just want to say something to the ladies out there, because I know we've been giving all this love and focus to the boys. I just wanted to say this one thing because I got 2 daughters, and I gotta say this: I got a 24-year-old daughter, and I have an 8-year-old daughter. So I hit the reset button pretty hard. And what I want to say to the ladies out there, and to the young ladies in particular, is don't make permanent decisions with temporary people.
Baby, say that again. Say it again.
Permanent decisions with temporary people. You got to assess this man that you might be with and the completeness and the wholeness of who he is, as you also are assessing yourself.
That's real. It's real talk. Because, you know, we always hear people say, oh, I don't even know why I don't even know how I hooked up with this man or how I had this child by you. Because you did not know. Exactly. Right. You did not know. You didn't know that in some cases, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's real. We already know it. Some of us didn't know who we were having sex with. Right. That moment, you know, I tell people all the time, you can touch anybody in the right spot and get that person in that mood that you want them to be in. But you got to know who you are. And you just can't go for any old kind of mess that comes at you. All right, I'm stepping back out.
Well, I'm a step. Since you open up that lane, go ahead.
Lifetime.
Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, you know, since you opened up that lane, I got to open up Daughters Lives Matter and the relationship we had with regards to fathers and daughter relationships.
Yes.
And so, you know, I want fathers to think about, you know, we've got a whole, you go to daughterslivesmatter.com, and we have a whole campaign about pimp-proofing daughters. And I tell fathers to think about working with your daughter as the man you used to be.
That's right.
And get her in that frame of mind of making sure she understands, not just daddy, but talk about the man you used to be, so she can understand the psyche about what she is trying to avoid. Because a lot of times fathers want to hide who they used to be with their kids, particularly with their daughters. And so you can get a chance to go to pimpproof.com and see what we do with regards to solutions in terms of fathers being at the forefront of basically dealing with their daughters at an early age, and then also dealing with some very deep hurt and unresolved issues with their grown daughters. Because it ain't too late. Because, you know, he gets a call after she's been slapped, or after she's been pushed down the stairs, or after she's been shoved into a wall or through a glass. Then you go call daddy. But you know, what you don't know, that's what daddy used to do to mama. And so you begin to say that it's not that bad, and you begin to accept it's not that bad. And we got to be very real with our daughters about who is coming around that corner and can touch you in all the right spots. And you got to be understanding what's going on. And so that's one of the things that I think we have to make sure we understand is a father-daughter relationship has got to be tight. It's got to be real, and it's got to be raw. And the other thing too, one of the pieces that we did for these young men is we created a man plan. And there's a link from daughterslivesmatter.com, or you can go to streetpositive.com. And there's a man plan. And that was the structure of moving these young boys into their 30s. And once again, this was a 15-year commitment into their 30s. And it went through everything about who they deal with themselves emotionally, what kind of support team, what their credit score is, how much income do you make, what's your expenses, what exactly are your investments, what's your end game, what's your retirement date, how do you take care of your kids, what's the relationship you have with your kids. So you go through that man plan, and it makes you look at yourself as to you not being able to lie about who you are right now. And when you begin to put together that man plan, you'll see a support system that you can call on, your lifeline, to help you get to where you need to go and not continue to put your family at a generational disadvantage to keep them stuck. And so I would encourage those particular steps for strategies. And it may or may not work for you, but this is what worked to get 15 young boys to a point where they actually are now aware of who they are. They can take care of their families. They know what they're doing next in life. They know what leadership looks like in the home, and they are not afraid to stand up and tell you, no, that's not for me. I got to take care of my priorities. That's my family. That's my children. Everything else is off the checklist. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. And listen, gentlemen, we are like in the final throes of this conversation. So Terry, I'm sorry, you just gave all your information, and this screen is up here. And for everyone who is watching, you will get this information and you will be able to reach out because you'll have everyone's information. And so I want to take a moment and just go through each one of the gentlemen and their organizations. And so, Barry, we're going to go ahead and start with you, Mr. Accius. Please talk about a little bit about Voices of Youth, and I'm going to put this information here so everyone can read it, and we'll move on through the screen.
Well, I mean, Voice of the Youth, we started off with being just a mentorship program and leadership program, but we've spawned out to do so many different things. One of the biggest things that we've done besides lead our kids and provide access and resources to our kids to graduate, our young people become a part of our culture. You know, we have a lot of our young people that end up graduating out of college that become peer mentors themselves. And we're from the grassroots. I mean, we're straight from the soil. We don't often get a lot of the big funding because, unfortunately, being the CEO, I'm a little bit unapologetically Black and outspoken, so I don't really play the political games, but it's also charged a nuance of how we look at our community, how we look and deal with our young Black youth. So I stand on a lot of great people. My ancestors have been motivating me and embodying this vision that I've kind of put out there for my young people. And every time we come around or we do something, whether it's dealing with domestic violence, police brutality, doing great talent shows, things that will help support our young people and support our communities, you know the impact is real.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, before you go, I do want you to share what you've been doing during COVID-19 that has really changed the game in Sacramento.
Well, me and my two other brothers, we created the 3 Black Chefs. I had an idea because we're always doing, you know, work, and I thought it would be smart because I have my culinary degree, my culinary background, for us to feed our community. So up until this point, every Thursday and Friday, we have fed over 20,000 meals to our community. Every folks come every Thursday and Friday for 3 hours and gets a hot culinary cooked meal. Again, our youth are over there not dedicating their time with volunteer hours, but actually getting paid for our 3-chef program. It's called Feeding Our Beloved Community, and it's really taken a surge where it's actually created other groups to kind of follow pursuit. So we're really excited watching other people see the success and say that we should be doing it in our community as well. So we're very appreciative of that.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And next, I'm going to bring on my brother, Bishop Dr. K. Donnell Smith.
Well, I'm going to be real brief. I just don't want to manipulate the conversation, but I have to say, I have to just piggyback on what Terry Boykins has said, because it's so pertinent. When he said, teach your daughter the old you. The old you. And I say that because I was a wretched man in my past. I didn't grow up in church and know nothing about church and none of that. So she's seen the old me. And I say that to say, going back to what Bernita Walker said, she don't believe a person should date till they're 20 and 25. My daughter, seeing the old me, was a virgin till she was 25 years old. And as she also wrote the scripture down, raise up a child in the way they should be, and when they grow old, they will not depart. So saying that to say is very impactful on what Terry Boykins said, as far as letting your kids see the old you, so they won't be, you know, just these men coming up. You know, she's seen the low riders, the motorcycle clubs, and so she wasn't infatuated by the things that these young boys was trying to show her, so she can get caught up. So that was so important. But just saying that to say also, what we do in our organization, once again, when people hear church, they hear bishop, I'm not your typical ordinary type of pastor, bishop. I mean, we got every people in my church, they got their khakis and t-shirts on. They come from the streets. I don't know. They might have been in club on Saturday night, but they make it in the church on Sunday morning. They still out. Some of them still active, involved in gangs, but I want to have a safe haven for them to come to. So when it is whatever they're going through, I'm the ones that's, going to court with them or just showing them there is a better way, because that's where I came from. So once again, my ministry is leading Christians to Christ, bangers to the Bible, and harlots to holiness. You can see the documentary on Amazon Prime on what I literally do out in the streets. So I don't want people to get the churchy thing confused with the names and the titles and all that. I'm just a servant for the Lord because of where I came from. I'm also part of Helpers Foundation, where we reunify the foster kids back with their parents, the ones who are coming out of the prison system, and the kids are coming out of foster care, working with Melvin Hayward for Helpers Foundation, and then also with Mayor's Crisis Response Team and things of that sort. So my thing is, there is a better way. If he could change me, he could change anybody, and that's what I do.
Thank you. And then last,
and I'm gonna say amen and amen, Bishop Donnell.
Amen.
And then last but not least, and let me just, before my last speaker speaks, I just want to thank you all for being on this line. This has been a tremendous conversation, and we are going to have part two, because we only touched just a teeny little bit. Just a teeny little bit. And I know Mr. Donnell Monday, he's just jumping in and he's giving his commentary in the chat. So, we might have to bring you in next time, but we'll talk more about that. So we're on we are already past 3 o'clock. I apologize for going over, but can I bring on Mr. Fluker, please?
Sure.
Share it with us.
Sure. I just want to say in response to showing my daughter my old me, or telling my daughter my old me, I want to show her my new me. And what I mean by that is my daughter is my North Star. Both of my daughters are my North Star. And I try to walk this life in a way that one day that she would want to marry a man like me. And so with that type of responsibilities comes a lot of heavy action. And so I had to redefine who I was and who I am, and to who I am today. And that goes back to what Barry was speaking about in terms of evolving. Barry, I'm really impressed with what you're doing with those young folks up there. I would love for them to come to our summer camp that we have in Big Bear. So on the side, we got to chop that up and see how that could be worked out.
OG, done.
So I've been proud and blessed to be the founder of an organization called the Village Nation. I'm going to tell you a quick story, then I got to go. I'm teaching at a middle school in a predominantly white neighborhood while I'm coaching at Cal State Northridge in the afternoons. And I'm leaving the middle school, and as I head towards my car, I'm kind of walking kind of slow. And this little Jewish white kid comes walking up alongside of me. Hey, Mr. Fluker, how you doing? I said, hey, I'm a little tired. I'm headed from one job to my other job. He goes, funny thing. I'm headed from one school to my other school. I was like, what school is that? He goes, Hebrew school. I'm like, Hebrew school? I was like, what do you learn there? He goes, nothing much. This is how great my people are. See you later. And I like walked 1 or 2 blocks before it hit me in my head of how profound what he just said and the advantage that he has going through this life, understanding who he is. And as life throws his challenges and his spears and his arrows and his bows at him, he stands there with his feet wide, knowing who he is. It's critically important that we tie our kids to something that's greater than themselves, and that they understand who they are, they understand their history, that is going to set them forth and tie them to their present situation and provide them guidance that they need to get through all this. So God bless you all. I welcome you guys to our website whenever you might want to do that. We work with schools, and we're getting ready to do a little virtual thing and create a virtual village. And that way we can reach out to all you brothers and sisters. Peace.
Wow. So, Mr. Donnell Monday, I saw you just took your mute off. I know you got something to say right quick.
I was just listening to Fluker, you know what I mean? To be honest with you, how he was just pretty much, touching bases on how the young man, was going to another school from another school to pretty much learn about his people. You know, that's what really caught my eye. You know, it's like, you know, pretty much you have other ethnicities, you have other races learning about their culture. You know what I'm saying? And then you have, you know, us as us as black people, period, in general. You know, just, you know, like it's like pretty much like we're not pushing that, or you have certain individuals that will push it, right. but the push isn't strong enough because of the ignorance in our people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have to be the primary teachers of our children. Nobody else allows the enemy or the oppressor to be the teacher of their children.
But Donnell, also, too, real talk, there is pushes, but it's not strong enough because culturally we're adopting European ideology. Yes. And whatever's popular, we have consumed the popularity, and usually because we have no functionality and structure or infrastructure, we don't have our own media sites. So if you're controlled by those oppressing you, you're only going to hear what the oppressor wants you to hear. But we have to be in volume and speak louder and not tell the Negro who's telling you about your history and look at him as he's crazy and let's keep on listening to Lil Bootsy. It's just a reality that we got to break.
Yes.
Hey, just real quick, I just have a question for Donnell, if we could, before we can. Donnell, because I had a chance to see while I was on. Donnell, what did today mean to you?
What today's mean to me? I would say, you know, pretty much, you know, I want to say kind of like, it's like destruction, to be honest with you. You know, you have social media, you have little kids committing suicide on camera, you have Caucasians, white people to be more vivid, killing our black men.
Bring back Kelly tomorrow next day.
You have police brutality going on. You know, to be honest with you, it's like pushing in a direction to where it's like pushing our people more in oppression, to where, you know, you have strong black people like yourself, you know, trying to fight for our people, you know, wanting to do things for our people, but it's like our people are so far gone, you know, it's like there's no coming back. Like, it's like, okay, for example, you have quarantine, you have COVID-19, you have the coronavirus, and you still got black men, black young men, us as black African Americans killing each other. Like, you just heard about a murder the other day. Like, oh, you heard about little Deontay getting killed on the corner, you know what I'm saying, during quarantine. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're still going at it. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's no understanding. You know what I'm saying? There's no it's like we were just so impressed by, to me, to be honest with you, all of this ignorance comes from slavery, period. It comes from slavery. I don't care what nobody say. Because, for an example, if you want me to go towards slavery, you know, somebody say, you know, why does he keep going towards slavery? Why do you keep going back towards slavery? I keep going back towards slavery because when you're enslaved, when you're slaved, okay, if you're a slave, if Barry or Bishop or Fluke is a slave, you know what I'm saying, and I get freed, I'm looking like, you know what I'm saying, I'm free, but Fluke, Barry, Bishop, y'all ain't free, though, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I'm always be better than y'all. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the ignorance come in. And then you say, you know, Barry gets free. You know what I'm saying? For example, you know what I'm saying? Now Barry's saying like, oh, Fluker, I'm free. You know, Bishop, I'm free. And he's saying like, Donnell, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Nigga, I don't like you. You know what I'm saying? You been free, but I don't like you, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Woody woo, etc. You know what I'm saying? So that's where hate comes in at, and that's why you have black young men walking down the street looking at each other today like, damn, why the fuck is he staring at me? Or why, excuse my language, but why is he staring at me? Or why is he looking at me like this? Or you have black women looking at like, why she got him? I don't know why she got him, or this or that, you know, etc. I'm just saying, man, like and to be honest with you, the government ain't making it no better for what they put out and what they put out towards our people. I mean, what they put out towards you know, just towards like pretty much what they have going on with the minority of people. You know what I'm saying, with the minorities, what's going on. So I mean,
hey, Donnell, you talked about the ignorance that's out there, and you seem like a pretty intelligent young man. I hope you're sharing the things you learn with your folks, you know, with their circle, and let them grow as well. We as brothers most certainly gotta make sure that we lift as we climb. We lift as we climb. So as we climbing, we lifting. As we climbing our way up, our whatever situation we're in, we lifting. You feel me, my brother? I feel that in your spirit.
Most definitely.
And you know, Donnell, you spot on, but I want to be very careful on how we inject that slavery mentality. You have to remember, they weren't taken from our homeland, our motherland, because they were ignorant. Those slaves were rich in mind, body, and soul. So I don't necessarily believe it was the enslavement. The mentality wasn't drawn because we were more together as being enslaved. We were more cooperative together because, to be honest with you, there was no choice. And reality, a Negro get out of that, he ain't gonna be put around, because you gotta remember, after enslavement was black codes, redlining. So there were so many things that happened after the fact. So it's not necessarily the enslavement, but we can go on round two. But we have to understand the ignorance that we are in now is not deciding for ourselves what we're going to identify as real. And I think the real nigga approach ain't helping us anyway. And us consuming what social media, I saw you talked about social media, consuming what social media has displayed to us as our real, and our dying burning desire to be accepted, whether it's accepted in our own culture or accepted in the European ideology. Because you've noticed, when Negroes get money, Negroes walk away from their communities. That's the rich, smart, athletic, can sing, whatever. We move away from our communities. We're not sitting there gentrifying our own communities. We're allowing them to be gentrified. So we just have to be very careful on how we strategize, because no slave that was coming from that boat was ignorant. They wasn't bringing ignorant people to build off their land. That's far from the truth. And slaves fought for everyone to get freedom wherever they were at. You won't learn, you won't hear from that, because if you hear empowerment from the oppressor, that's going to change the whole game. So just be very careful on how we kind of communicate, you know, how we've got to this place. It's a long, drawn-out story, but I think we'll get there soon to kind of really get that good, defined definition of why we are here.
And Donnell, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to do this, because I'm here, and I want everybody to hear the tone, because I was picking this up. You want to talk about what an angry young black man sounds like? That's what an angry young black male sounds like. But Donnell, I want you to do something for me. I want you to send Miss Candy what you need to succeed. I want you to send her, because this is the village. And we spent this time talking about moving and shifting the paradigm, and we would be remiss if we didn't ask you what you needed. And so I want you to write down what you need to not be stuck, and get that to Miss Candy. And I guarantee you, the brothers that's on this call should be able to, once again, should be able to help you get what you need. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you. I get you, most definitely.
Thank you, sir.
Beautiful.
So listen, gentlemen, ladies, everyone, my honored guests, this has been a rich conversation. We would definitely have to do part two, because we only touched on just a little bit. So for everyone, you will be able to reach out to me, because I will be contacting each one of you. I will send you this video tomorrow, if not this evening, but definitely tomorrow. if there's anything that you need, you will be able to reach me, as well as you will have the contact information for all of these men. And I know this is wild because we still have so many people on the call, and I really want to thank you and just let you know how honored I am that you've taken the time today to join us. You could have been anywhere doing anything, and you were here learning and listening and giving your input. And so this has been amazing. Since we've got just a little bit more time, I just need one second from, or 1 minute, less than 1 minute, 30 seconds from each one of our honored guests. Is there anything that you would like to leave everyone with before we close this out? Okay, Barry, let's start with you. And for those that don't know, his name is Barry Accius.
Barry Accius. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm in Facebook jail right now for being unapologetically black. And you can follow me on Instagram, Barry Accius. I just want to tell everyone, just be positive in this time. This is a reset button that we're going through. Don't look at this as the beginning. I mean, the end. Look at this as the beginning. We're in our black pandemic, but we've been in a black pandemic. So continue to be positive and continue to impact your community and your family in a positive way.
Thank you so much, Barry. And Bishop, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Well, you know how I close out. For those who are called by my name will turn from their wicked ways, then God will hear from heaven and heal our land. We need a healing. Let's start with ourselves first so we can go out in the world and go heal our young youth, men and brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Fluker, can you give us 30 seconds?
30 seconds. I just want everybody to know that you are the summation of your ancestors' prayers. They prayed long before you was born, while they was tied to those slave ships, while they were being tortured and mutilated, when they was being sold and raped. They prayed not for themselves, but they prayed for you. And you are the summation of those prayers.
Yes.
And once you begin to process that and understand that, you take it to a step further for those young ones that are out there listening. You are also the summation of your unborn child's prayers. They're not even born yet. They're praying, please, Dad, do the right thing. Please, Mom, do the right thing. Make this a safe place for me when I get here, Mom. Make this a safe place when I get here, Dad. So that's who you are. You're a summation of both your ancestors' prayers and your unborn children's prayers.
That is amazing. That just touched my heart right there. And last but not least, Terry Boykins, can you bring us all the way home?
Well, I wanted to say, let's help hurt men heal. Let's help hurt men heal. www.streetpositive.com. The hourglass is running. Will your house be in order before it runs out?
Yes. Thank you so much. I just want to give the last final thoughts. Terry, that was very insightful, but I want to change that. Let's heal hurt boys so they don't grow into hurt men. That's what we really need. We need to heal hurt girls, and we need to heal this community. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is that I really would like to make sure that people understand that the things that have happened to you have dictated how you walk, talk, and act. These are not the true you, because we cannot blame, and I'm going to say this, and people don't like it, but I'm going to say it. I don't blame you for doing the things that you do because of the things that have happened to you. But once you learn better, we have to do better. Yeah. And I want you to understand that because you were raised around violence and abuse, because you came from some mess and some trash and some bullshit, that does not make you mess. That does not make you trash. It does not make you bullshit. You are beautiful and you deserve the best. So let's start walking and talking like we are the best. Let's learn how to get that respect and have that respect for ourselves. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so very much for your time. You will receive this video, and I hope you join us next week when we're talking about the reentry community, and the following week when we're talking about grief and loss. And for the whole month of June, we're going to be talking to Black and brown and all kinds of men, because it is Father's Month. And I really want to bring this conversation because I believe that we cannot make change until we bring the dynamic voices of the boys and men into this conversation. And on that note, my guests, gentlemen, you have been phenomenal. I love and appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Everyone be blessed and be safe.
Bless. God bless.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you. All
My
right,
brother.
Peace. Thank you.
This has just been amazing. Thank you all so much. Feel free to leave any comments, your contact, and we'll be reaching out to you. Leave it in the chat.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Yes, Mr.
Bye.
Nita.
God bless all of you.
God bless you. You know, people still talking about you guys from last week, too. Yes. Thank
God
you.
is awesome. See you
Hey,
later.
Kelly.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Hi,
much.
Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm blessed. How are you?
It's good to see you.
Good to see. Good to be seen. Good to be seen.
Right. Exactly.
Amen. And not viewed.
Yes.
Everyone.
Okay, I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna be good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Time.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye.